Good evening, everyone. I think some of us can claim bad weather, thunderstorm, something that has made our internet a little bit wonky, so we're a little bit slow in getting started. But thank you for being here. Afternoon. If you're in the Pacific time or in Hawaii or in Alaska, in the Eastern time, it's sort of the evening. So thanks for giving us part of your evening. Um, we will introduce Competition Council Chair for the American Canoe Association. I have been a member of the ACA since 1986. Very, very proud to be able to be part of the governance and part of the organization. So thrilled to be here, and hope that you get a lot out of this presentation tonight. So this is if you have been listening or been watching about the panel discussions. This is the number 3 of 5. There have been 2 awesome panel discussions prior to this, and there will be 2 more after this. So and all of them, hopefully, you're watching either on your computer or through Facebook or YouTube. And if you know someone who wanted to see any of these, any of the past panel discussions, they can see it online. And it's on the ACA website where all the links are. So let's get to it. So this is all about meeting each other, giving you some information about the different types of paddle sports competition, and also particularly if you're not a competitor. If you are a competitor, it would be introduction maybe to some of the other disciplines. If you are not currently competing, haven't done that in the past, this might make it seem a little bit less mysterious and a little more friendly, and hopefully you'll go away knowing that you're welcome to participate by any of the disciplines you hear about tonight. Next slide. So just a brief on the agenda. We'll talk a little bit about the disciplines. We'll spend the most of the time talking about 5 topics that we've thought would be of interest and kind of posing some questions that we'll have our expert panelists here talk a little bit about amongst themselves. And then we'll open it up to Q&A from you guys, because you are the most important people in this meeting tonight. And then we'll wrap up, and hopefully we'll be able to provide opportunity for you to ask questions later, follow up with us, and ask anybody that you know who's part of your competition group or in a club that you know to pursue some of the discussions that we've started here. So this you probably know. We've been around for a long time, and the kind of the committee, the different committees are stewardship, community, safety, instruction, and competition. Now we're going to try something. Let's see if we can make this work. No guarantees, but we're going to try a poll here. And if you are on your phone, you're watching on your phone, we're very sad, but please don't participate in these polls, because if you do, you'll leave us. You can't come back. But if you're on a computer or a tablet, pick up a phone and let's see, send the following and a message to this sounds like my audio was bad. Suz, you're the only person I can
All right.
see.
Hi. So as you can see, so I don't have the presentation in front of me, so I will do the best I can. So for those of you who don't know, the ACA has been around for a very long time, since the 1880s, and we're not-for-profit. There are over 15,000 members, and we have 300 plus clubs in the organization. We sort of think of the ACA organization as a community that's about stewardship, community, sort of that recreational community, safety and instruction, and of course, we have a very large arm now called competition. So if you could move to the next slide, please. Whoever can do that for me. And can you all hear me okay? Is there a yes? All right. So the Competition Council was created when competition was brought back into the organization in 2017. And that we're basically, because of COVID and various other reasons, we've recreated or are reintroducing the Competition Council, which is one of the 3 national activity councils that exist as a part of the American Canoe Association. And the idea of those councils is to help feed into the board what those needs are for those various areas of the organization. And I'm going to try much harder not to talk too quickly. So if you could move to the next slide. So in case you are unaware, we have 16 different disciplines, and this gives you a representation of that. 3 of our disciplines are Olympic disciplines. 10 of our overall disciplines are represented in the International Canoe Federation, the ICF. And then we have sort of a joint relationship with some of the rest of those organizations with another international organization. So as you can see, the way that we've termed it in the council is we have this unique tapestry that we are a part of. And we basically, could you move to the next slide, please? We basically are very much a community that it consists of every type of body of water that there is in the world. So we have salt water, we have whitewater, we have river water, flat water, lake water, you name it, one of our disciplines is a part of it. We think of the responsibilities of the Competition Council sort of to represent, promote, qualify, and encourage all of our various disciplines and participants with this goal to help all of our paddle sport athletes achieve what they wish or to be standing on the podium in terms of being a competitor. If you could keep moving on then. This again is one of our, sort of represents our Olympic disciplines. If you could keep going. All right, so everybody says this: humans love to challenge themselves. And this is an example of a sort of club race, recreational competition, which will have, this is a marathon race, and that will sort of show you what we're talking about. Our competitors, because humans like to challenge themselves, go all the way from a recreational competition level to high performance in the Olympic Games. And if you could move on, please. And this is an example of our tapestry, as we call it. And as you can see, we have a representation. What we're trying to show you here is actually how many different organizations that we're actually sort of involved with or a part of. And that goes from a local US level. I call the US level local, apologize, but that's how I think of it. And in that case, we have not just the American Canoe Association that we work with, but some of our disciplines will work with the Canoe Association, they will work with dragon boating, they work with another SUP organization or the surfing organization, and of course the outrigger or Va'a community. Also rafting, which you cannot, I think, see there, but every single federation that represents sport sort of has a chain that they report up to in various components. and that goes sort of to a Pan-American level, which represents the Americas, continents, and the Caribbean islands in Central America. And you can see there is what we call COPAC that represents about 7 different disciplines. There is a Pan-American Dragon Boat Federation that we work with, and a surfing association for the Pan Americans that we work with. All of those Pan American organizations work up to an international level, or an international competition level, I guess is what you would say. In our case, for the Olympic sports and for 10 of the disciplines, we go through the International Canoe Federation, commonly referred to as the ICF. Our 3 disciplines, of course, go up to the Olympics and through. And then we have some various other organizations that are higher level competitions, like the International Masters Game Association, the International World Games Association, International Dragon Boat, International Surfing, International VAA, there's international rafting, and all of those are sort of identified under that international world. I hope that answers some of that sort of question. If we could move on to the next slide. Thanks.
I'm back.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you.
Okay, so here we're going to try this poll again, see if this can work. Oh, maybe it won't work because we can't use my computer. This would be fun if we could do the poll. I think we're going to have to pass on it. But you get a prize if you can guess which International Canoe Federation competitor this was. He's a team member for the Squirt team in the U.S. freestyle competition in Columbus, Georgia last fall. So let's just keep going past the poll because my computer is a mess. Thanks. So we're going to move on to the panel discussion, which is really kind of I think the most important sharing time. I'm going to introduce, could you go to the next slide? We have 4 awesome people here. One you've just heard all about. But Matt on the left and on the top, who's waving, is an enthusiastic waterman since childhood. He hails from Cape Ann, Massachusetts, home of Blackburn Challenge. He's an ACA competition member and lifelong multi-sport athlete with more than a decade of experience as a competitive surf ski paddler, passionate about developing ocean racing in the U.S., proudly representing the Northeast region on the ACA Ocean Racing Committee. And next, Suzanne, and she may have described herself a little bit, but she does an awful lot. She's the chair of the Sprint Officials Association. She's on the board as our treasurer, COPAC board member and treasurer, member of the ICF Finance Commission, 30-plus year ICF Sprint and Marathon certified official, as well as recently an ICF SUP certified official. She's been part of Paddlesports her entire life. She has an immediate family who continues to be involved in Paddlesports. She spent her summers at Lake Sebago in New York State, which exposed her to recreational paddlesport, sprint, marathon, slalom, and sailing, and currently resides in Seattle. That's a lot, Suz. So Mike Cook, with the glasses there, he has been outrigger racing since '75 and whitewater racing, open canoe since 1990, where he's won 14 gold medals. Race organization for several slalom events, including the age-old, wonderful New England Slalom Series, and he chairs the ACA Open Canoe Slalom Committee, where he has been a member from '96 to 2009. He's been chair since 2009. And he also is a racing coach for the Cayuga Outrigger Club in Ithaca and a member of the East Coast Outrigger Association. Mike, I know it's been hard to make it here, so thank you so much for making it. Lee Liebfarth with the cap is the chair of the ACA Slalom Competition Committee, and he has been actively involved in paddling for over 40 years. He is an Olympic coach, president of the Nantahala Racing Club in North Carolina, and previously served as the COO of the Nantahala Outdoor Center, where he oversaw paddle sports operations. He lives in Bryson City, North Carolina, with his wife Jean and their daughter Evie, who represented Team USA in the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games and will probably be in Paris paddling for the US in Paris. So thank you guys so much for being here. That's a lot of words, but it's because these guys are so experienced, and I hope you appreciate all the years of dedication and passion that they've invested in the sport. Okay, now let's go on to the good stuff, the better stuff. So we have 5 panel topics, and I want to thank Matt. He's sort of the copywriter here, so if something sounds really good, it's because he wrote it. If it sounds goofy, it's because I'm not reading correctly. So the first thing, there's so many new ways to have fun on the water. You saw some of them with the disciplines. If you have never competed, you know other ways to paddle and have fun on the water. Competition, though, is really all about the athletes at the end of the day. So let's dive in with a couple of questions. And I'm going to have Suz, I'm going to have Matt. He came up with these questions. He gets to go first. What are some of the important considerations for new paddle sports athletes looking to participate in competition? What would you say?
Me, Suz, or Matt?
No, Matt. Sorry, Matt.
Good.
Yeah, I can jump in. Sure. Thanks, Risa. So, I think there's a lot of things to consider when you're a new athlete getting ready and looking to get into competition. One of the first things that I thought about when I started to get into paddle sports competitions, and that I encourage everybody to think about, is accessibility of those competitions. It might sound like common sense, but you don't want to pick a paddle sport discipline that is not available to you where you live. First of all, so I live on the coast, and ocean racing made good sense for me. Whitewater, not so much, because I'm not very close to something like that. If you're close to a particular context, then I think that lends itself very well to you participating more, and that's really what you're looking for. You want to find something to participate in, and then secondarily to that, I'd say you're looking for what I like to think of as sort of challenge alignment. You want to find competitions that are right sized and right fit for you where you are in your performance journey, your athletic development. So I think those two things: finding a particular discipline that's accessible to you so you can participate frequently, and then also finding competitions specifically that fit with where you're at in your development.
Cool. Thanks, Matt. Here's another question. Suz, you can take this one. In what ways has the evolution of equipment technology impacted competitive paddle sports? What are some of the emerging trends that we might be aware of? Oh, I'm sorry. That's not the question. I'm sorry. What are the key factors contributing to athletic development in USA paddle sports today? How has this evolved over the past few years?
Well, I think I'm going to go back and talk about accessibility for a minute, because I agree. I really feel like there's a lot more local racing that's happening, and that can be very at various levels. You can compete just with a group of people on the water, or you can find some higher level competitions even in a local area. So I think there's a lot more racing than there used to be in the past, which sort of can help yourself. But I would say that from my perspective, accessibility to classes and programs is a lot easier, compliments of the internet existing. I think the ability to, technology, electronic technology in general, boat technology, paddle technology, all of those have really added and changed the sports, all of them, right? Technology especially has become extremely important for being able to really get some very quick feedback on how you're doing with a program or with your coaching or your particular training program. That definitely has a factor. I think there's a greater awareness in the world in general about the importance of exercise and access to exercise. And I think you tend to find often athletes that are already an athlete want to try something new. And so you have a different fitness level maybe that you had in the past, or, 30 years ago, definitely. I also think that coaching has very much changed and developed. Instructors, programs, those kinds of things have all changed and really helped to contribute to helping to create a whole different level of a competitive athlete.
Okay, thanks, Suz. Now I'm going to move on to equipment, the second panel topic. So everyone loves gear. There's a nice variety there. that you see lots of lengths and widths and shapes and sizes. So Mike, I think this would be good for you. What are some important considerations for athletes when you're selecting equipment for competition, particularly if you're starting out? How do you even begin to do that? That's for Mike. I don't know if you're muted or not.
Sorry about that. So in open canoe slalom, we're somewhat unique in that we have 26 classes that we race. And what that means is that you can come with pretty much with the boat that you happen to own and bring it to a slalom race, and there will be a class for you to race it. And then later on, if you want to get into the composite classes, you can buy a boat, but pretty much you can come with the boat that you have, and which makes us kind of unique.
Oh, that's
Did
great.
I answer the question?
Yeah, that's a reason to think about open boat whitewater slalom. Lee, how about you? Here's the second one. In what ways, this is what I said before in error, what ways has the evolution of equipment technology impacted competition, competitive paddle sports? And what are some emerging trends? There are definitely some things in slalom like that.
Yeah, I mean, the sport in canoe slalom anyway has really evolved quite a bit. I mean, most athletes are using these high-tech carbon fiber boats that are very specific to their weight and size. To find these boats, is sometimes a challenge because they're mostly manufactured in parts of Europe. But there's a used market, and clubs usually have a good selection of boats. But to actually answer the question that you asked about the evolution, for us, at least that's specific to our sport, Kayak cross is a new, or was formerly known as extreme slalom, is the latest addition to the Olympic program. And kayak cross, it's an event that puts 4 kayakers head to head down a section of whitewater. We're using only about 7 gates, and you have to roll. But what's interesting about kayak cross is that unlike traditional slalom, where we have to use these carbon fiber boats that are fairly specific, kayak cross uses commercially available plastic boats. So half-slice boats and the popularity of half-slice boats have really made this into what they consider an Olympic-ready venue or Olympic-ready sport. So I think that there's been a lot of advances not only on the traditional slalom side, but with kayak cross being newly introduced into the Olympic program. There are companies now that are designing boats specific for kayak cross, and you could take these kayak cross boats, which are plastic boats. I mean, Piranha. I mean, many manufacturers have a half-slice boat, and some of which are very specific to kayak cross. But anyone can take these boats out on a slalom course, have fun with them. They have the same type of characteristics as the carbon fiber boats. Yes, they're a little bit heavier, they're a little shorter, but they still can provide a great introduction into slalom. And again, they're much more available than the traditional carbon fiber custom boats.
Yeah, Risa, I'd like to jump in here too. It's a similar thing on the ocean racing side. I'd say the early sort of phase of ocean racing, really the only thing that was available were sort of the high performance surf skis and ocean skis that were out there. And these were your composite and carbon fiber boats, very long, very thin, fairly tippy. It took a lot of practice to get used to. And I think when we talk about advances in technology, we think about like the ever going pursuit of high performance. But similar to what Lee's saying, the surf ski manufacturers have actually designed more approachable boats. And this is what's really, I think, helping to change the sport on the ocean racing side of things. The boats are much more stable now. They're much more easy to get in and actually have fun in. And this is actually helping participation numbers to go way up, and more people are paddling the boats, more people are racing the boats because they're more fun. They're not as tippy, and they're easier to kind of get up to speed. So, I think advances in technology can go both ways. They can enhance performance, but they can also enhance availability and accessibility, right?
And Risa, can I add something here too?
Quickly.
Okay, so in 30 seconds or less, one of the things that's also happening is because the boat designs, so on a high performance level or on an everyday level, have been sort of certified with a manufacturer, like on an ICF level, you can pretty much find the same boat no matter where you're going. And the ability to use a similar boat in any location also helps to create accessibility, even on a high performance level or a beginner level. So you have that ability to find things. And it's the same thing is happening in stand-up as well.
Cool, that's a great point. Okay, next panel topic is instruction or coaching. So this is really important whether you're at your very, very beginning pool session or you want to get serious and you want to actually excel and be more technical with how you proceed or progress. But let's say we have new paddle sports athlete and that person is excited to get on the water. They've acquired a nice new boat and a paddle, and they don't know really where to start. How do you even start? So how about let's go back up to the top. Matt, you want to pick this?
Sure. Yeah. So what do you look for in a coach, or in some disciplines, an instructor? There aren't always coaches available. It really depends on the discipline and sort of the nature of the competition context. But regardless of whether you're looking for coach or instructor, I think what you're ultimately looking for is an alignment, personality-wise and philosophy-wise, right? I mean, if you're just starting out and you're just looking to sort of get up to speed on the nature of this water sport or paddle sport that you've now invested in, you don't necessarily need to go out and find an Olympic coach who's used to training elite athletes at that level. You need to find someone who's more philosophically aligned and sort of in that right space. You're also looking for an instructor or a coach who's available, from an engagement perspective. I think you want to talk to, you want to talk to a couple of different instructors or coaches and see who has the availability to work with you. It's one thing to get online programs that you go out and work on your own, but it's really nice if you find someone local to you that is actually available and that you can work with directly. The feedback loops that you get from these people are going to be, invaluable. And then, just lastly, sort of along those lines, again, it's about access. Is there someone in your local area, or do you have to drive 2 hours away just to take a lesson or go through go into a coaching session with them? So those are some things that I would think about as a new person coming into paddle sport if you're looking for a coach or an instructor.
Yeah, I would actually jump in with just something along those lines. I was at a coaching seminar years ago, and they said that the statement was that coaches can't motivate athletes, and by definition, the motivation has to come from the athlete. But what a good coach can do is inspire athletes, and I think that's kind of what I also tend to look for. I agree with everything Matt said, but looking for a coach that inspires confidence, obviously that's knowledgeable in the sport, and that promotes a safe and inclusive environment. Those are, I think, the critical pieces.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Suz, how about you? For someone new to competitive paddle sports, what are some common misconceptions about coaching? How does a coach add value beyond basic training?
And I really love all of these topics, and any one of these topics could be its own live stream. I think we could all talk about it for a really long time. Because we all sort of see it from a slightly different point of view and all very similar, actually. I agree with what Lee said, right? An athlete, you need a coach that you're in alignment with, what your goals as the athlete are. You need to know that the coaching philosophy or what this coach is going to offer is in line with those goals. But you need to come to the table, so to speak, the program or the coach, ready to go, on time, with the right clothing, ready to participate, and to be willing to take constructive criticism and to accept the fact that, especially if you're a beginner, you're going to fail. You're not going to be the perfect person in a boat the very first time around. And I think that I think what you said very much about how a coach is the inspiration, can inspire an athlete, is very valid. The coach is not the miracle worker. They're not going to make you the perfect athlete overnight. It's a process that takes time. And I think a coach that is willing to sit down and talk to you and create goals with you and work towards what your goals are, and that you can communicate back and forth with, that the coach can like tweak things, that's what you want to do. You have to have that feedback going in both directions, both from the coach to you and you to the coach as the athlete. It's just.
Thank you. Mike, here's one for you. A lot of the disciplines, the majority of the disciplines that we have in this country and around the world use boats where you kind of start over there and then you move over there in a straight line, hopefully, and faster than anybody else. But there are a few disciplines that utilize whitewater and take advantage of what whitewater provides in order to make the competition unique to itself. So if you are interested in one of those kind of things, how do I learn? I'm a beginner paddler. How do I learn to do that type of paddling with not going in a straight line, like slalom and like freestyle? Where do you start?
Well, show up at a local slalom race. Especially in open canoe, you'll find that everybody's trying to help you. There's always somebody there that can help you. You can be a complete beginner. You can show up without a boat usually, and somebody will give you a boat and get you started. If you're at home to practice, just start out in flat water. Try to make that boat go straight. Try to go around obstacles that maybe you place in the water, like buoys. And get out on some whitewater. And one thing about slalom, it's the best teaching tool. If you want to be a good whitewater paddler, it's the best teaching tool there is. When I go out on the river and play paddle, I can tell from a quarter mile away somebody that's had some exposure to slalom just by the way they're using the river and all its features. And that's how we usually get most people in the slalom. They'll ask me, how did you do that move? How did you ferry across there? Oh my goodness. Well, come to a slalom race and you'll learn this stuff.
Great, thanks. Okay, next topic number 4. So competition. Now our new athlete has acquired their equipment, has had a little bit of instruction, and so it's time to compete. Let's see, how about we'll go to Lee. What should a new paddle sports athlete know about entering their very first competitions? How can they prepare effectively for the challenges and opportunities? Rank beginner, what would you say?
No, it's a great question. I actually agree with everything Mike said in terms of, finding the right race, finding the race that fits, that we want to start with these local races. These local races are fantastic. They're for newer athletes. The courses are typically a little bit easier. And they really, they foster a fun and supportive environment. I think that finding the right race is maybe the first step. And then once you've kind of gotten into that site, once you've gotten past that first race, it's easy to make connections to help you get to the next races, or to find other people to train with, or maybe even to find a coaching group. So I think that, choosing the right race, maybe nationals, team trials, that might not be the best first race, but these local club races are fantastic. And one of the experiences that I certainly had as a new racer was, attending these races where we had not only kayaks, but open canoes and recreational boats and some fast boaters. And that mix of paddlers really made the events fun. And I think that even though, with racing, we're trying to challenge ourselves, and that challenge comes with some stress. And races can be a little bit stressful, but we want to make sure that they're always fun.
And I'd like to just add too, I think being clear and realistic about your goals going into your first competition, or really any competition, just being clear and realistic about those goals, that helps you to keep motivated both in terms of preparation and then as well as enjoying the experience itself. Up here in Massachusetts, we have the Blackburn Challenge. It's a 20-mile open ocean race. And, I talk to people all the time and they say, how do you think I'll do? And I say, well, I think the number one goal is just to finish this thing. And it might take you 5 hours, but your goal should be to complete the competition, and then you can talk about how well you do in the competition in comparison to the field, in comparison to what you say. But let's focus on one goal first. Let's focus on finishing the race, and then go from there.
Well, Matt, I'd say 20 miles for someone who's used to doing a 90-second race seems immeasurable.
That's the beauty of multidisciplinary paddle sport, right?
All right. So, Suz, can you describe the typical journey of a new competitor in paddle sport from local to higher levels of competition, and milestones or benchmarks that they might set up so that they can feel like they're accomplishing something?
Okay, but I also would like Lee to weigh in on this question. To me, obviously everybody sort of touched on that. You have to have your goals aligned with your skill level for the race that you're going to participate in. You want that to be sort of realistic sort of goals, and things that you have within your control that you can achieve. Because as we say in the paddle sport world, no race course is the same, no day is the same, no race is the same. There are similarities, but there's never exactly the same weather or water. And so I think because of that, you start out small, you start out with goals, you go back, you reassess where you are and where your skills are. You set up a new training plan for the next set of goals that you want with your coach. You train, you go and pick the next race and the next set of goals. And as you're moving on, you are again creating that feedback loop with your coach to establish when are you ready to be at a national level competition or have a much harder set of goals to achieve. And then are you ready for a team, a national team or an international team? And what does that look like? What is that going to cost you as the athlete in terms of time and monetary time as well? Money, like how much money you're going to have to spend. So in my mind, that's sort of your progression plan. You train, you compete, you assess, you set a new set of goals, you're going to train, you compete, you assess, right? And then you are working with your coach, or maybe you have the ability to do this on your own, but you create your goals and you move down that path to find a higher and higher or stronger or higher level competition. However you choose to phrase that in terms of giving yourself greater challenge. So Lee, I would have you add into that, whatever you think.
Well, I agree with everything you said. I think for me, there's really not a typical journey for an athlete. I think it's different for every athlete. I think that, we tend to focus a lot on skill development, right? As you get stronger, you're more fit, your technique improves. But I think it's equally important to focus on mental strength and conditioning. I think confidence is so important. And, I guess my recommendation would be just to avoid pushing too quickly to the next competitive level. It's not like we have to continually step up. That the confidence involved in doing mid-level races is really important before we start to work on a national level or before we go to a World Cup or even to the Olympics. And so being able to really take our time and stair step up, I think is important in our the progression of an athlete.
And I'll just add too, from a journey perspective, you're going to see huge gains early on with a serious, approach to the sport. You're going to advance quickly, and it's going to be very rewarding. And as you progress in terms of the level of competition, the investment gets larger, and the gains are smaller in terms of maybe it's time on course or whatever it is, speed. You start from moving up a mile per hour average speed to a 1/10 of a mile per hour average speed, and the competition gets tighter and tighter as well. So, from a journey perspective, I think it's just important to understand that because, at some point there may be a time where you say, I think I'm where I want to be and I don't need to go any further. I'm happy at this level. So.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And I said that there's really but when we talk about progression, like it usually starts at the local race level, then goes to national races like team trials, US nationals, age group nationals. And then it tends to move to international, where racers are going abroad to race in ICF ranking races or other types of events. And from there, it goes to a national team level. The national team becomes, more and more exclusive. So as we get farther along, the pyramid gets smaller and smaller as we get to the top. I guess the top of the pyramid for each of our sports is a little different, whether it's a world championship or the Olympics or whatever that happens to be.
And also, I'm going to add to that, because in that progression that you're going to the very peak, in theory, which is a medal on a podium in the Olympic Games, or whatever your highest level of competition is, when you are reaching a point where you're doing international competition, sometimes you're making a decision to do a World Cup but not go to a World Championships, because it's going to suit your progression path as an athlete to maybe be exposed to a World Cup as opposed to not doing very well in a World Championships. Like maybe it's not worth that trade-off from a time or a training perspective. And so I also think that there's a general belief out there, at least in some disciplines, that the minute you are racing internationally, well, this is great. I can do everything internationally. And I think that there actually is, much like what you're talking about, Lee, there's a progression to that very steep pinnacle, right, in an international world as well. So it's not just that you do it in a national environment, but you're also doing it in an international global environment. So I appreciate what you said there, Lee.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we're going to move on. Thank you guys, because this is where your experience has been so valuable to provide this perspective. One more panel topic is clubs and communities, which may be the context for most of the folks who are on our call tonight. Mike, how about you take this one? For a new athlete entering the world of paddle sports, what are the key benefits of joining a paddle sports club, community, and what should they consider when they're figuring out the organization that works for them, if they have a choice?
That's a tough one for me. It's just finding the local slalom racing series. Like in the Northeast, it would be New England Slalom Series. There's a 9-race series. In the South, the Nantahala. I don't know about clubs though that they can join. And out west in Missoula and Salida, Colorado. There's places to train. Bellefonte, Pennsylvania, Valleyfield, Montreal is a good one. Lock 32 in Rochester, Wausau, Nantahala, and Madawaska in Ontario. But as far as clubs, I don't think I can answer that question very well.
Would someone well, you gave some really good examples. Would someone else like to jump in?
I'll jump in real quick, because if you go to the ACA website, there's actually a section of Paddle America clubs, and those Paddle America clubs, you can kind of search by region, by state, and that gives you a good, kind of a blueprint of what clubs might be available in your region that could help you get involved in competition. Not all clubs have a competitive part to them, but there are several of them that do, and I know a lot of clubs even promote some type of race or series of races. And I'll also add to that in terms of like what we want to look for. The clubs are really where the majority of our athletes get started. That's where they get introduced to the competitive side of things, and there's kind of a trifecta that I look for when we talk about the ideal training situation or the ideal club, and that's having a good training location, having a coach, and having a training group. And if you can have those three things, the coach, the location, and the training group, that kind of leads into, that allows people to progress in the competitive side of the sport.
And I'm going to add to what Lee said. And I'm sorry, Matt, I just overruled you. I want to add that, especially for a beginner athlete, you have access to coaching in a program that will teach you some stuff. You have access to equipment and a paddle, and they will talk to you about safety and how to be safe on the water, and that you should wear a helmet when you're doing slalom. All these things that are so important as a component. And then in addition to that, you sort of are brought along into the paddle sport community, and that gives you access to even more information. I also would like to add, in terms of a club, so I see that as a very important component of a beginner athlete that wants to do paddle sport in any discipline. Some clubs are very social, and some clubs very much offer multi-disciplines. So you may have people involved in both marathon and sprint, or in ocean racing and marathon, or ocean racing and stand-up and sprint. You may have a club that does, freestyle, slalom, and whitewater all in the same club. And I just want to point out that sometimes that gives you the opportunity to try things maybe you didn't think you were going to try or wanted to try, and maybe you get a new interest in wanting to try. So I see that as having a lot of value.
Right. Anything else? Matt, you want to chime in?
I was just going to say, and this might actually be getting already into our second question for this topic. Yeah. So, but I mean, if there's no club around you, the ACA is here. I mean, we're a national association of paddle sports enthusiasts. So, I think that's something to consider. And just by doing that, you'll actually get access to, the community of national paddling enthusiasts. And it's something that I've learned just being a member of the association over a few years now, that it's allowed me to connect with people who aren't necessarily in my local area. There's member networks, there's meetups that you can go to, all sorts of stuff, and there's this competitive side of us that allows you to hook in if this is what you're looking for. So I know a lot of people on the call tonight are already ACA members, but if you're not and you're looking for that community, it's right here.
Great. Well, I think that we've gone through our questions and gotten your perspectives, and we have we're still in pretty good time. We have 15 minutes left, so I guess we'd like to open it up to questions in the chat. You have questions that you would like to ask? Let's see how we can facilitate this here.
Risa, I see a question in the chat about if no club's available, how can you get a club started? I thought this was kind of interesting because there are a lot of regions where there's not necessarily a competitive club. I know for our sport, there are people that want to get involved in whitewater slalom, but maybe they don't live around whitewater. And so just getting, a few people together, that are enthusiasts, getting a coach involved, hiring a coach within that, you can create your own club, even if it's not in a centralized area that's typically known for that sport. And that's been, that's been how some of our top athletes have actually gotten started, places that you wouldn't expect, that maybe are not, in Ohio, maybe that are not close to whitewater, that have become, Olympic athletes because they've been able to kind of pull enough people together to start that club, to start that enthusiasm. And then that really catches on. And then at some point, that group has to travel a little bit to those other races, but it's a great way to start that community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Casey put in the chat, Lee, Matthew has a question about what slalom is in the context of paddle sports, like what slalom is.
Sure, it's a good question. So there's actually, what I'm talking about is canoe slalom. Canoe slalom is actually, it's what the international name is for our sport, but it includes canoeing and kayaking. And it's on whitewater. It's on a whitewater course. The courses are typically artificial these days, and there's several artificial courses within the United States even that are completely man-made. They're like an artificial river. They have like plastic obstacles. Some of them are like little Legos that can move around. But the sport has been around since it premiered in the Olympics in 1972. And so that's what canoe slalom is. Kayak cross is a new addition to that sport where the four plastic boats go together. And then Mike's sport is actually, it's kind of the roots of canoe slalom. Open canoe slalom, was started, and the rules are very similar. They use a open canoe, but they and their courses are maybe a little bit different. I think it might have some different rules, but it's the same idea. We suspend poles above the river, and you have to negotiate those poles. And so it's a combination of speed and accuracy.
Any other questions? A lot of times we take that was so great to hear, Lee, because we take it for granted, those who assume other people know.
No, it's a good question. I mean, it's sometimes hard to find, and I think someone's put in the chat that all you see is like skiing slalom, and we're a little bit of a niche sport, but it's a pretty cool sport. Definitely something to check out if you get to see some YouTube footage and or some Olympic footage.
Yep. Any other questions? I started offering fun paddleboard races. Is there a way to get support building these out?
The answer is yes, but we just need to know where you are.
Yeah, Christine, where are you? Maybe put that in the chat also.
Ah, there's another question too.
I'll also just say, like, along the lines of learning about the disciplines. I mean, for those of you that are YouTube inclined, the ICF is constantly posting videos of competitions going on all over the world. I think their channel is Planet Canoe, I think. And so you can see kayak cross, you can see slalom, you can see sprint. So there's a lot of races that are being put on right now in terms of internet media.
So Risa, can I answer this Kristen question?
Please.
Okay, so I think that because there is no staff on this call to answer the question from the ACA office, yes, we have on both the ACA staff and the Competition Council, we've been discussing how we would like to encourage clubs to consider offering more than one discipline. That, of course, will be very dependent on the areas that they are located, whether they're a club that's primarily on a river or a lake or on ocean racing. I do know some of the clubs in the Northwest, for example, they participate in ocean racing, marathon, sprint, very straightforwardly, I can say that. And to some degree, they just go out and do some sea kayaking. We have people that just go out and kayak all the way to Alaska and back. So I think the answer is yes. And we're definitely encouraging that as people are interested. And Risa's come up with an idea that if you are looking to maybe be exposed to a particular discipline, if you get in touch, we're trying to connect clubs to a person that might be able to help show them that particular discipline.
Yeah, in a couple minutes, Casey's going to put in the chat something that you take a look at. Just hold on to the URL, and it's a survey on this session, but it's also a request for if you are a club, if you're a competitor, whatever you are, and you're interested in connecting with another club, learning another discipline, learning about equipment, anything that we've talked about, just let us know in that survey, and we're going to try to connect the dots. If you're in a club, you might want to have an elite athlete come and do a Zoom meeting for you guys, or if someone's driving across country, intercept them on the way and do a short demo, or invite someone who's involved in racing to attend an event or a race, so that you can begin to become familiar with the different products. So that's coming up in a little bit. I think we skipped a couple questions. Let's see. So Christine, with the sub question, she's in Colorado Springs. Another comment, in the greater New York area, you can find both Paddle America Club and non-Paddle America Club. And then she's got the URL there. And again, it's sort of looking at this. This is the Atlantic division of the ACA. And Shoaldale Productions says, don't forget the many university outing clubs. Penn State Outing Club was instrumental in my involvement. If your university doesn't have one, consider starting one. Many VCU, there are lots of bigger schools, state schools who have outing clubs where you can borrow gear, rent gear, take a class.
Yeah, and to be clear on that, a lot of university outing clubs, they actually allow people from broader community to join those outing clubs. You don't have to be necessarily a student at the outing or at the university to join that outing club, depending on the policy of that university and the club. But here in the Boston area, there's a lot of colleges, and many of them have members of the outing clubs who are, either graduated from that university and are alumni, but also just people from the area.
One thing that I always think of, I can't think of the name of there's a fellow who did a podcast for a couple of years in the DC area, and he did all sorts of topics, but his name of his podcast was called something like My Last Swim, which was just alluding to the fact that everyone who does this sport, whether you're beginning as a paddler or you're beginning to compete, is not that far away from having been a beginner. There's no one here tonight, even if there are 1,000 people who are paddlers here tonight, would not remember what it's like to be a beginner. So if you just ask and you show an interest, there's going to be someone who will take you up on the interest and help you as much as they can. Any other questions? Beginning to figure this out. The chat. Yes. Does the ACA have classes in which we can learn slalom techniques? Ooh, that's a really good question. I think the answer is some. Anybody know better than I do?
It's something that we've been talking about, actually. We've been working with Jed Hinckley, who's the competition director, about coming up with a curriculum for canoe slalom and to try to introduce people to canoe slalom. One of our goals is to create more coaches as we approach the next Olympic cycle. So the answer is you could go to a club to do that, but we actually are working on programs that would be an introductory slalom program.
Ooh, how about slalom program for open canoe?
I think it's going to be the same sort of approach, basically. So, Mike, is there a good place for somebody to go right now to learn open slalom canoe?
Well, really just show up at a local race and you can get a lot of coaching. I'm hoping someday that slalom is brought up in the ACA instruction part of the programs. Because like I said before, it's the best teaching tool there is. And handling a boat.
Right.
So Susanna Pierce, who just asked this question, I also think if you go and look on the ACA website under the instructor side of the organization, you can look to see if there are skills there that are some crossovers that you might be able to learn from. There was another question too, by the way. Risa, did you see the one about gear being exchanged?
Yeah, Pam Dillon asks, is there any interface where gear can be matched up or donated to new paddlers? I don't know that there's a large scale effort like that. I live near Washington, D.C., and we have lots of programs where I have 10 people sign up to do pool sessions, and the APB goes out and we find 10 boats, 10 paddles, 10 life jackets, and 10 helmets to provide for those people, to use for several weeks or, whatever. In that, we're lucky because there are lots of people and lots of boats to borrow. Used market, someone mentioned earlier, that's not sometimes a good avenue. So it's worth exploring. If you can find a club. If you can't find a club and you can find a store, a retail store that sells boats that are sort of like what you want, usually not a Walmart or a Dick's necessarily, but a specialty store, they will know the people in the community who know. The club might not be based at the store, but they will know.
There's a lot of Facebook Marketplace now, right? And there's not just Facebook Marketplace, but Craigslist. And once you start to plug into a paddling community, you might find that they have their own resources, that they might have a list server group that tries to exchange information about what's available in the area. I find that there is, we just had it happen on the sprint side. There's a boat in California that somebody is looking to let go of, and it's going to be sort of picked up by a group that needs it for a new club that's being created. So there's a lot of communication that happens in the world, back and forth when you start plugging into the community. And I honestly, that's how I found my husband's outrigger boat. I found it through a Facebook Marketplace group. So definitely there's a lot of resources there. I don't think, Pam, there's any one interface place, and that would be a really good question for the new paddle sport trade coalition to ask.
Yeah, I'll just
It's a good idea, though.
that you know, the paddle sports community in the USA is very big, but the discipline specific communities are each relatively small. So I think, I mean, I'll just speak for the ocean racing community, especially the smaller, section of it up here in the Northeast. Whenever anybody discovers that there's a new community developing, or even just a new person interested in becoming part of the community, resources just gravitate to that initiative. So, in Burlington, Vermont, there's a burgeoning ocean racing community on Lake Champlain, and we have managed to line up outrigger canoes. They purchased a used OC6 from someone in the Boston area to help get that part of their community going. So everybody just gets very excited when someone or some entity new comes to the community, and resources tend to flow in that direction.
And once again, I would encourage you to look at a Paddle America club that's near you, and don't be afraid to just reach out to, even if it's like info at, Duluth Paddling or whatever it is. If someone is interested, that comes from a new person that shows up and is in their community, for sure, they're going to help you out, and they'll be a knowledgeable source of information.
And I think, Risa, we've shown that while we're all a little different in our disciplines, the similarities in what the needs are very similar in what you're looking for as an athlete or in a coach or whatever, even though your technical skills are different in each of those disciplines, and that we will all help another discipline. So you can ask, slalom can ask a marathon person, well, I'll just try and help each other out. We're all part of the same community, really.
Well, we're at the hour. We're a little tiny bit past the hour. Sorry for the technical difficulties, but I saw several times Joseph and Casey, a couple people put the survey link in the chat. So please take a second to fill that out. It's really short, but I think important, besides telling us if you thought that this was an okay session, that was fun, and you learned, that if you have information that you'd like to share, questions about learning, questions about gear, please put that in there. We will get back to you, because this is what we do. So thank you, Suz and Lee and Matt and Mike and Corwin Communications, Joseph and Casey in the background for helping out. And we appreciate everyone who's here today, whether it was 2 of you or 100. And hopefully we'll see you on the water. And thanks for being a member of the ACA if you are. And if you're not, give it a thought. Thanks,
and thank
everybody.
you, Risa. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And Mike.